I'm here on one of my favorite trails in Shenley Park, and springtime has finally arrived in the city of Pittsburgh. Now, if you're familiar with the city of Pittsburgh at all, you know the name Shenley. It's one of like 5 names that everything in the city seems to be named for. There's Carnegie, there's Mellon, there's Frick, there's Heinz, and there's Shenley. Carnegie is known for steel, Frick is known for Coke, Heinz is known for ketchup and pickles, Mellon is known for banking. So, what's Shenley known for anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. It was actually Mary Shenley and her scandal that helped shape the city that we know and love today. I'm Knowles. I'm here to explore and explain. Now, it's not news to most of you that Shenley Park was donated to Pittsburgh in 1889 by Mary Shenley on the condition that it would remain parkland forever. This was actually probably one of the greatest things that ever happened to the city of Pittsburgh. It was the first in a long series of improvements that changed the city from a crowded, disgusting town to a slightly more spread out, slightly less disgusting town by the turn of the 20th century. Now, if we want to get the full picture of Mary Shenley's heritage, we have to go back to the beginning of Pittsburgh and a man named James O'Hara. James O'Hara was one of the first pioneers in the area. He was an Irish soldier who moved over here after we won our independence, and he gravitated to the frontier because he knew that's where the future was at of the country. And he was actually one of the first government contractors, and he made his money by selling weapons to the militias that would go out into the Northwest Territories, which at the time included Ohio, and push the Native Americans further and further west. He got really rich doing this, and he bought up a bunch of land in the Forks of the Ohio area because he knew that that would probably be a great place for a city in the future. Turns out he was right. And Colonel O'Hara had a daughter named Mary. Now, she married the son of another pioneer, and her husband's name was William Croghan Jr. He was also a rich trader, and he was in a similar vein of James O'Hara. And they had a daughter named Mary Elizabeth Croghan. And she's the Mary that you have to remember. It gets confusing. There's 3 generations of Marys in there, but our Mary is Mary Elizabeth Croghan, born in 1826.
Hey everybody, Editing Knowles here, popping in to add a little bit more context. As usual, I ended up going deeper down the rabbit hole while I was in the editing process. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself, but I just wanted to add this in here for you so you can kind of get even a better idea of just how powerful Mary Shenley's family was. So on the picture that you just saw before this one, you see that Mary Carson is her grandmother. That's the Carson family that used to own a lot of the South Side, which is why it's called Carson Street. And if you go on William Croghan Jr.'s line, his father was obviously William Croghan Sr., who was married to Lucy Clark, who was the older sister of William Clark, aka Lewis and Clark, the guy that helped discover the entire western part of our country. And then their uncle, William Croghan's uncle was George Croghan, who, if you've been on the eastern side of the state on Highway 522, is called the Croghan Pike. That's named after him because he did so much traveling and trading with the Native Americans in that area. So it just kind of blew my mind, found out these facts in quick succession, and it shows that Mary Shenley's family is important not only on a regional level, not only on a state level, but also on a level of national importance. So just want to throw that in there. Enjoy the rest of the video.
Now, because the Croghans were well off, they wanted their daughter to have the best education that money could buy. This meant that she ended up at a prestigious all-girls boarding school on Staten Island. It was there that a British Army captain arrived at port one day, and his name was Edward Wyndham Harrington Shenley. He was 43 years old, and his sister-in-law was the one running the boarding school. That's why he was there. He was looking for a place to recover from an illness. Somehow he met the 15-year-old Mary Croghan, and they met and fell in love. Now, her father forbade this because he said, "This guy's 43 years old, what are you doing?" And she said,
"Daddy, I love him!"
And they eloped and they ran off to England. Her father fainted upon hearing this news, and the boarding school actually went out of business because of the bad press it received. I mean, this was a scandal. This is a 15-year-old rich American heiress going off to England by a guy who's old enough to be her father. This is just not going to happen. I forgot to mention, by the way, that the captain was twice widowed by this point, and both of those prior marriages had also started with elopements. And sources differ on this, whether it was actually an illness that brought him to port, or whether he was deserting his duty in British Guiana to suppress the slave trade down there. It's a little murky. Maybe he wasn't such a great guy. Surprise, surprise. So Colonel Croghan cut off communication with the couple at this time. Mary's mother was dead, which meant that she was the sole heir to a pretty sizable chunk of property throughout the Pittsburgh area, something that her grandfather James O'Hara had bought, and then her father William Croghan Jr. had inherited, and now it was up to her. However, her father actually went to the state legislature to pass a bill to disinherit her from this so that Captain Shenley couldn't get his hands on it. So it was set in a trust. And sometime later, sources differ as to when Colonel Croghan had a change of heart, and he actually went to London to visit the couple and their children, and he pleaded with them to move back to Pittsburgh, and he even built them a house called Picnic House to entice them to move here. And they might have visited, a few times, but they didn't stay very long, and they never lived in Picnic House. In 1850, Mary's father died, and she began a lengthy court proceeding to return her inheritance to her, to get it out of that trust, and she was successful in this. But if you look on old maps up until 1878, the landowner is marked as Captain E.W.H. Shenley and not her, even though she was the legal owner of the land. By all accounts, Mary never had a change of heart, never felt like she was being taken advantage of. The couple was married for decades until the captain's death in 1878. They had 11 children over those years, and some of those children actually married into British nobility. So now, after her husband's death, Mary becomes a wealthy widow. She has about $5 million in estates in England and about $50 million worth of property here in Allegheny County. And in true Pittsburgh fashion, she became a philanthropist. She donated a lot of land to the city and to different groups throughout her lifetime, and a lot of it was also developed after her death in 1903. She owned not only Shenley Park, but she also owned the place where the Carnegie Museum and Library is in Oakland, as well as CMU's campus, as well as actually most of Oakland. She also owned and donated probably the most unique building in Pittsburgh. That's the Fort Pitt Blockhouse down in what's now Point State Park. She donated that to the Daughters of the American Revolution. Unfortunately, Picnic House is no longer standing today. It actually did stand until 1942, at which point it was surrounded by a golf course, and then later on in the 40s and 50s, the neighborhood of Stanton Heights was built up on that same property, and no trace of the estate remains at all today. Today, of course, there's no shortage of things named after Mary Shenley. There's, of course, Shenley Park, there's the Shenley Tunnel, the Shenley Bridge, Shenley Plaza, Shenley Fountain, the old Shenley High School. I'm sure I'm missing some on there. You can put those down below in the comments. So even though it's pretty scandalous how Mary became a Shenley, I'm kind of glad it worked out that way, because can you imagine this being called Croghan Park or the neighborhood of Croghan Farms? There's one I missed earlier. What if she hadn't met anybody at boarding school and she came back to Pittsburgh and had her social debut as a socialite and married into the Mellons or the Nagleys or some other up-and-coming family at the time? It might have just melded into the history pages. And what if she hadn't lived in London her whole life? What if she had lived here and that land would have been sold off piecemeal throughout her life, and we might not have had the intact tract of land that is Shenley Park, or the way that they were able to plan Oakland because they could buy all the land at once. I think those historical what-ifs are really interesting, and if you're into those historical questions and the history of Pittsburgh writ large, then subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, like the video. But before you leave, I want you to follow me. I need to make some more headway down this trail, but there is one piece of Mary Shenley's legacy that I don't think many people get to see, and I'm going to go see if I can get in there, and I'm going to take you with me. Okay, so obviously I'm filming this on a different day. As you can see, it's a little cloudier. It's about 15 degrees colder than it was, but as I said, it's spring in the city. And our secret location is inside of this very not so secret building that I'm sure you're familiar with. This is, of course, the Cathedral of Learning in Oakland. And I hope the room's open today. I'm gonna go in there and check it out. So I'm here with Michael Walters in the Shenley room, and Michael, what is your role at Pitt?
I'm the manager of education programs at the Nationality Rooms, and we're in the Crone Shenley Ballroom, which is one of the historic properties that my department administers. It is not part of our normal tour of Nationality Rooms because it's not a room that had the same origination as the gifts that were the Nationality Rooms. But this is a historic Pittsburgh property that was given to the university by a man who purchased the historic Picnic House in Stanton Heights. This was a residence that was built by William Croghan, and he intended this ballroom that we're in to be the room in which his young daughter, Mary Croghan, would come out to society in her debutante. Mary, however, was sent at age 15 to Long Island, where she eloped with a man in his early 40s who was a British officer with the last name of Shenley, and she became Mary Shenley. She never used the house, and when she was approached to provide land to the city of Pittsburgh, she gave a large bequest of land, which became Shenley Park, but the house fell into disrepair. And so by the mid-20th century, the man who purchased it, who was a builder, decided to offer the interior of the ballroom to the University of Pittsburgh, and it was deconstructed and put back together in this location. It's an outstanding example of 1830s Greek Revival architecture in the United States.
And can you show us some of these architectural details that make the room so special?
Yes, the painted wooden fluted columns are mounted by very elaborately carved Corinthian Corinthian capitals. And on top of that is this equally elaborate entablature that reveals the ceiling. All of these are original details to the room. The room by necessity had to be fitted into this space, so it's actually cut down 18 inches shorter than it would have been in the picnic house. And the interstitial spaces between the pilasters and the columns are university installed plasterboard. So the painted decoration you see on that is 20th century. The decorative objects that were part of this room reside in a different collection. They're in the collection of the Carnegie Museum of Art. So in the 1960s, just a few years after the installation of this room was completed, there was a local interior designer who came and outfitted the room with some appropriate period antique furniture, such as the two swan chaise lounges that we have in the room. This room, however, is used by administrative personnel for a variety of meetings, and some years ago, the Chief of Staff for the Chancellor's office decided to switch out the furniture, which would have dated back to that 1960s redecoration, and the ebonized cane chairs were removed, and the seating capacity of this room fell from 24 to 20. So there are these modern takes on federal-style chairs around the central table. And as you can see, the table is set for an event that will occur tomorrow. It's used usually once or twice a week for such events. So we might have the philanthropic and alumni engagement arm of the University of Pittsburgh hosting visitors here. We might have different academic departments having parties, or visiting scholars come and they are given a soiree here. So we have, for example, the Department of Sociology next week having the room the entire day. Interviews are sometimes held in this room. And very occasionally we do have people from the public who have an interest in historical architecture wanting to see the room. So we have partnered with Pittsburgh History and Landmarks occasionally when they have wanted to show this room.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for letting me in here. I know it's an exclusive club, but I guess if you're a big name on YouTube, maybe I'll let you in.
Sure.
And these paintings over here, this is Mary Shenley here on the wall?
Yes, these paintings do not date all the way back to the lifetimes of these people. They are copies of the paintings, but they are actual paintings and not photographic reproductions struck onto canvas. So Mary Shenley and then her father, William Croghan, further down the wall.
These are really well done paintings.
Yes.
Even if they don't go all the way back, I'm a big fan.
The chandelier is another lovely piece of artwork in the room. It is an example of a crystal and ormolu chandelier, which is gilded bronze, featuring griffins and a good deal of classically inspired decoration.
I didn't even notice the griffins on there. That's a good detail. I think what strikes me is just the opulence of this room. Obviously, they were a well-to-do family, but for a house called Picnic, it sounds kind of funny. It sounds like it should be a little cottage in the country.
Apparently, it must have been a fairly large house. There were two rooms that were associated with this installation. The other room, which is behind the rear door of this space, opened in what was known as the Oval Room, which would have been a room where ladies might have gotten ready before they came in for a debut party.
Okay.
That room, however, is not available for any sort of departmental meetings. It is part of the suite of chancellor's staff offices, and so it has been changed around over the years.
Okay. Well, Michael, thank you very much for letting me come in here and film. This is really an impressive space, and I think it does a good job of carrying on another aspect of Mary Shenley's legacy to Pittsburgh by being tangentially related to her, as everything in Pittsburgh seems to be.
Absolutely. A lot of people are interested in this room because they know the name Shenley. And then when they come in and they see the architectural opulence, it's usually the wow factor, and they wonder, why is it even in the school building?
Right.
And it is an unusual room that has limited use.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you again, and everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing the inside of the Created Shenley room. That took me a very long time to get into that room. As you can tell, things have gotten much greener since I filmed the first part of this video, but that's okay. It's a pretty exclusive club, and I guess you have to make award-winning documentaries on YouTube to get in there. So, once again, thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, share it with your friends and family, and I hope you like the story of how Mary became a Shenley and the scandal that helped form Pittsburgh. I'm Knowles, and I explored and explained.